All right, welcome back to your video lecture with chapter 21, looking at the Atlantic Revolutions. So the next one on our list is the Creole Revolutions of Latin America. And here we see one of the famous revolutionary heroes during this time period in South America, Latin America, called Simón Bolívar. Right, Bolivia, of course, is named after him. So let's go back and go into some background history. Remember, when we look at society in Latin America, it is based entirely on race, where the white European people, whether it's people native to the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal, or whether it's the descendants who are born here in the Americas, the Peninsulares and the Creoles, these are your upper class. These have the most wealth, the most power, the most opportunities available. In the middle class, we have the mestizos, we have the mulattoes, and they have some opportunities, some wealth, some political power, but not much. Middle class. And of course, at the bottom of this society here we see is Indians, Native American Indians, and Africans being the lowest of the low. So the Creole Revolutions are called the Creole Revolutions because it is the elites, right, that are going to lead this revolution. It is not going to be, it's going to be a revolution against the Peninsulares, against colonial rule, right? They don't want the Spanish in, controlling Latin America anymore. The Creoles want to basically control everything for themselves instead of having to share or to be, underneath, inferior to the Peninsulares. So they are going to use the same Enlightenment ideas that we've seen over and over, that we saw take place in the American Revolution, and the French Revolution, and the Haitian Revolution, and they want to remove Spanish authority from Latin America. They want to remove Spanish mercantile policies and high levels of taxations from Latin America, right? They want to have full control of the governments in Latin America, where they don't again have to share power with the Peninsulares. So it is not that the middle class, let alone the lower classes, are rising up like maybe we saw in Haiti, rising up against the colonial power. It is the elites who want this. Very similar to what we saw in the United States. So the independence in Latin America, again, it starts in the early 1800s, and by the mid 1800s, all of South America, out of Latin America, is going to be free. But the problem is that even though they are going to win independence and kick out the Spanish, and they're going to develop these constitutional republics, very similar to what, of course, the United States developed, there's going to be a constant instance where the military are going to overthrow the government, right? They're going to revoke the Constitution, and they're going to claim that they're protecting the people, right? So military leaders are going to have so much power in so many South American, Latin American countries, where they're going to be able to basically restart the government in their favor. So whenever there's any type of liberal or radical revolutionary movements in a country, whenever there's any attempts to have more equality between the upper class, the middle class, and the lower classes, there is going to be a military intervention. And these guys are going to be known as the caudillos, right? Sometimes we also call them the juntas, right, which is the group of military officials that decide that they're going to overthrow the government. So this leads to a lot of political instability in Latin America. Again, whenever any attempts to spread equality or increase opportunities for the lower classes, the upper class Creoles are going to support military rulers to come in and change the government to maintain the status quo, maintain things the way they are. In addition to that, we're going to see that the Catholic Church is going to play a role in supporting political authorities, whether it's military or elected. and because there's like a partnership where the church is going to have a lot of privileges of land ownership and tax exemption that is protected by these governments. And then the church is going to use their religious authority to reinforce and support and legitimize the power of the Caudillos, the power of the constitutional monarchies, or constitutional republics, I mean. So we see, within that 40-year period that South America is going to go from being colonies of the Iberian empires of, Portugal and Spain, into numerous South American independent countries. Now, again, who are benefiting? We always look at who is benefiting from this. And in this case, it's going to be the elites. The Creoles are going to benefit the most, right? We're going to see a shift in political power and economic power where the upper class, the highest of the high, the Peninsulares, are going to be removed. The Creoles are going to move up, but everyone else pretty much stays the same. Women are not going to be granted any more freedoms than they already have, any more rights than they already have. Natives and Africans are going to still remain the lowest. Poor people, whether it's mestizos or mulattoes or whatever, peasants, they're not going to get anything else. So a lot of times the revolutionary leaders are going to use Enlightenment ideas to kind of encourage and gather support against the Spanish rule, against the Spanish military, against the Spanish authority. But the end result is that once they were in charge, they didn't really feel the need to share the wealth or the land or the power with anyone else, right? Even though, again, they recruited the lower classes to fight against the Spanish. So again, patriarchy is still going to be a major part in Latin America. There's not going to be a lot of social mobility. Race is going to be, of course, an integral, critical part of your status in society, and that's going to remain the same. Now, kind of the country that changes the least from its becoming from a colony to a independent country is going to be Brazil, where literally nothing changes. Brazil goes from being the colony of Brazil to being the kingdom of Brazil under the rule of a Portuguese king, prince, I should say, and then he declares that Brazil is going to be independent. The Creole elites all support him. Then eventually they kind of force him to become accept a republic, a constitutional republic, but nothing else changes. Slavery is going to continue. Remember, Brazil is going to be the last of the Latin American countries to abolish slavery. They're going to abolish it all the way into 1888. So race discrimination is going to be continuing. The Creole dominance, patriarchy, slavery, those are all going to continue in Brazil because, again, there wasn't a big, drastic, earth-shattering independence movement. No revolution here. It just changed from one ruler to the next, and the same people who were in charge before remained after. Now, Mexico, we'll get to next. Mexico's revolution is going to be a little bit different. It kind of breaks the mold, breaks the pattern. And that is because of this guy called Miguel Hidalgo. And Hidalgo was a Spanish Catholic priest. And here you see him getting killed, which tells us, what's going to eventually happen. But he was a strong critic of the encomienda system because he felt that it was, a harsh system against the Native Americans, against the people, the descendants of the Aztecs and the Mayans. So he actually unites the lower classes. He leads the mestizos and the mulattoes and the Native Americans, the Indians, to rebel against the Spanish authority. But the Creoles in Mexico, the rich people of Mexico, they don't support this revolution, the first revolution. And the reason is, of course, because Hidalgo is promising these lower class people that if they revolt and they overthrow the Spanish, then everyone's going to have land, everyone's going to have equal status, everyone's going to have equal opportunity. And the Creoles of Mexico refuse to go along with that. So they actually don't support him. And then the Spanish eventually put down this rebellion, and eventually Hidalgo gets himself killed. So here we see Miguel Hidalgo's, this is a painting of him. He's considered a kind of like a symbolic leader of Mexican independence. Now, after his death, is that it? Oh, here we go. So after he dies, eventually we see that we see that the Mexican Creoles will unite under a military leader, and his name was Agustin de Iturbide, and they're going to eventually rise up and overthrow the Spanish. And again, once the Creoles get involved, and they kick out the Spanish, they're going to keep all the power to themselves. The peasants, even though at first they supported the revolution under Hidalgo, they backed away because they realized they're not going to gain anything. So the Creoles in Mexico, they're going to gain all the power, kind of like what we see throughout Latin America. So remember, we're looking at Mexico in the early 1800s at the time of the revolution. Mexico extends from the Yucatan Peninsula down here all the way into the California, Colorado, all those other places in the American Southwest. Now, eventually, these conflicts, they're going to continue between the elites, between the Creoles, and between the peasants in Mexico. And eventually, we're going to have another Mexican Revolution in the 20th century, which we'll get to in another chapter. And we see again the same pattern between the church, the partnership between the church and military leaders and conservatives, always working together to keep changes from occurring. All right, so we're going to stop here with this part of the video. We'll see you next time.